On the 12th of March 1938, Anschluss, or union, between Germany and Austria took place, Austria ceasing to exist as an independent nation. The German army had marched into Austria, though it met absolutely no resistance whatsoever. In fact, everywhere it went, it was met instead by cheering crowds who threw flowers and not grenades. Hitler decided to drive over the border into his homeland and visit his birthplace as well as the cities of Linz and also the capital, Vienna. Security for the trip would be extremely tight. There was always the fear that somebody might take a shot at the Führer, especially given his penchant for standing up in moving vehicles, completely unprotected. In fact, for the trip into Austria, two agencies protected Hitler, the RSD, the Reichssicherheitsdienst, and the SS Begleitkommando. In total, 31 bodyguards would travel with a cavalcade of vehicles as it progressed into Austria, 10 of them acting as drivers under the command of Hitler's personal driver Erich Kempke. Members of both units wore identical grey SS uniforms to confound assassins. In total, there were 12 large Mercedes in the convoy. 5 cars were required just to carry the bodyguards, weapons and luggage, plus more cars for Hitler and his entourage, a group that included his valet Heinz Linger, adjutants Schaub and Brückner, press chief Dr. Otto Dietrich, the ever-present Martin Bormann, Hitler's personal physician Dr. Karl Brandt, Heinrich Hoffmann, Hitler's court photographer, and Generaloberst Wilhelm Keitel, chief of the OKW, the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht. The bodyguard detachment on the visit to Hitler's birthplace was extremely well armed. Between them they carried 14 machine pistols, and every man also carried 2 semi-automatic pistols. Hitler's personal adjutant, SS Sturmbannführer Wernicke, was given 2 extra machine pistols with 2 full magazines each, just to be safe. On the 12th of March 1938, Hitler's party flew in aboard 9 Junkers Ju-52s, the Führer's personal squadron, to Munich. And after boarding their convoy of cars, their first stop was Mühldorf, headquarters of Generaloberst Feder von Bock's 8th Army, which was undertaking the occupation of Austria. Army and Waffen-SS troops sealed off the headquarters from prying eyes. A short while later, Hitler's convoy arrived at the former Austrian frontier, the town of Simbach on the river Inn. It drove across an iron bridge festooned in swastika flags to the Austrian town of Braunau, where Hitler had been born almost 49 years before, when his father Alois had been stationed at the frontier as an Imperial Austrian customs inspector. Almost the entire population of Braunau was out in force to greet the returning Hitler, now the most famous politician in Europe and perhaps the world. Hitler was born in an apartment in this house on Braunau's main square, though no photographs exist of him visiting the old house during his drive through Braunau. His convoy, with Hitler taking the salute standing in the front of his huge Mercedes, passed right by the front of the building. During the Nazi period, Hitler's birthplace was venerated as a virtual shrine. The house was renamed, becoming known as the Adolf Hitler Geburtshaus or Adolf Hitler Birth House. The road on which it stood was predictably renamed Adolf Hitler Strasse. However, since the end of the war, the Austrian government has wrestled with what to do with the house, and following its compulsory purchase from its owners in 2016, it is currently being converted into a police station. This is something I've noticed with other of Hitler's properties, including this one that I visited, Hitler's old apartment, which is, surprisingly, also a police station. It's a great way to keep away unwanted visitors and detention, and before you ask, no, I didn't knock on the door or ring the bell. Though the house in Braunau has been saved from demolition, the conversion work will see its appearance altered in an attempt to conceal its history and dissuade tourists from seeking it out. Anyway, from Braunau, Hitler's convoy fought its way through crowds of adoring Austrians and pressed on towards the city of Linz. Next stop on the Führer's itinerary was the tiny school that he had attended in Fischelham, near Lambach, southwest of Linz. Hitler completed his first 2 years of formal education in this schoolhouse between 1895 and 97, after his elderly father had retired from the customs service and attempted farming and beekeeping at Haffeld near Lambach. Hitler met with the current pupils and teachers in 1938 and signed many autographs. The school buildings in Fischelham still exist and are outwardly little changed from when Hitler visited in 1938, though they are no longer used as a school. Hitler's convoy next drove to Leonding, where Hitler's father moved his family in 1898, following the failure of his farming business. Alois Hitler purchased this modest home at 16 Michaelsbergstrasse in Leonding, where he lived with his large family. In 1938, Hitler's Mercedes parked on the street outside of the house, and Hitler visited the building for the first time in many decades. The Hitler House is also little changed today, but it is no longer a residential building, and it isn't a police station before you ask. Today it is an administration office for the church across the street, a Catholic church Hitler regularly attended as a child, and whose graveyard contains to this day the mortal remains of his parents. Alois Hitler died of a stroke sat on this very sofa in a local bar in 1903, and his mother Clara died of cancer in Linz in 1907, her body being buried next to her husband's in Leonding. In 1938, Hitler paid his respects at his parents' grave, then festooned in flowers and swastikas. However, although the Hitler grave was left alone after the war, like Hitler's sister's grave in Berchtesgaden, it was disguised in the 2000s for the usual reasons that need no elaboration here. As with the case of Paula Hitler, whose actual grave marker is beneath the current one you see here, which is hinged to provide access to her name, in 2012 Hitler's parents' grave marker was completely removed due to local political pressure. However, their bodies still lie in the ground beneath. Next stop was the city of Linz, where Hitler had lived until 1907, when he had departed to try and become an artist in Vienna. Hitler always considered Linz to be his home city, and indeed planned to rebuild it completely after he had won the war, including creating a vast Führer museum of art in the city. Hitler drove into Linz in triumph, 31 years after having left a poor dreamer for the city of Vienna, and he was mobbed again by up to 250,000 Austrians happy at the time to claim him as their own son. After much parading, saluting, and marching about, Hitler delivered a speech from the balcony of Linz Town Hall, where he declared that Germany and Austria were at last united.
Und es kann nur ein Auftrag gewesen sein, meine teure Heimat dem Deutschen Reich wiederzugeben.
Hitler then spent the night in Linz, before departing the next day to drive to Vienna, and everywhere he went, Austrians seemingly were overjoyed to see him.
Stormtroopers and Austrian Nazis were everywhere, stimulating a peace-loving people in cheering and accepting the self-styled leader. Here might dominates right. Here the same crowds that only yesterday hailed Schuschnigg's promise of continued liberty, today cheer Hitler. Hysteria proclaims the triumph of a dictator and the death of a nation.
Thanks for watching, please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.